All right. Good evening, everybody. This is Friday evening, December 5th, 2025. This is Dr. Politics and Political Architect Show. The uh, the chief doctor, the head of the department, is at the Maryland State Republican Convention, and he has entrusted us, his interns or residents, to go take over the show. I'm Don Irvine. I'm joined by David Shepard. Good evening, David.
Good evening, and I'm a doctor, probably like Joe Biden, maybe, and
Yeah, right.
that that qualifications maybe not quite, but well, it's
Maybe
cold.
maybe Dwight can make up something, you know? We get some sheepskin of our own for this.
Yeah. Well, cold day here. Got some snow, and
Right.
I don't wish to complain, but as I get older, I have less tolerance, I think, for the cold. And then I just shovel my car off, which wasn't a big deal. I shouldn't say shovel; it dusted off. Okay,
Right.
fine, dust off, but still, no, I know I don't much care for snow and cold, really. But what can I say? Gotta have to be here. Um, but I think it could be a pretty rough winter, though. I'm not optimistic. I think we could have. We every few years we get a tough winter. I think we're due one.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
all.
no, it's like the stock market or something like that. It's like, you're gonna
Yeah,
something big will happen every
yeah.
few years, and we really haven't had that severe winter, um, and all,
No,
so
it's been a while. The worst one that I lived through. Well, you and I probably remember late '70s. We had a couple blizzards, but I think the worst was probably Snowmageddon. Remember, we had back to back
yeah.
blizzards.
Yeah, we
Uh,
were we were we were just buried by snow at that time.
Yeah,
It
that
was
was the worst I remember. I never
yeah.
back-to-back blizzards. I mean, we had blizzards as a kid, occasional, but yeah, nothing like that. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. So yeah, and I'm with you. I am The older I get, the less I like the stuff. I mean, as a kid,
yeah,
it was great because you can play in the snow, you can go sledding, and you
got
get
out of
off
school.
and got out of school, number one.
That was the best. Yeah, that was the best. But um, well, I was saying earlier, I was in your fair state yesterday. I was with the Riderwood Republican community there, and I spoke about the elections. And so a great group. I was saying that, how Facebook will remind you what you did last year? I was reminded that last year, very same day, I was in Riderwood community there in Silver Spring, speaking to the group. And so we joked that it may be an annual tradition, go there and speak. But it's a big, you were mentioning earlier, it is a big community, because they got a big complex there. And so for those that don't know, it's basically a retirement community. And all these retirement communities have different groups, and they have a Democratic club and they have a Republican club. So they invited me to come speak. And so I enjoyed it. The only thing is, I don't know Maryland geography enough, I guess, because, well, first off, traffic is always bad up 495. And, well, there's no real choice, really. So I knew that. But it was worse yesterday than I imagined. It was like 2 o'clock, and I'm going 3 miles an hour past Tyson's into Maryland. And then coming back, I made the mistake of really going, and I've done this before, it looks like, I think, going the Beltway the wrong way. You can get on the Beltway, but if you go the wrong way, especially because I'm in McLean Tyson's. So if I go the Beltway to Alexandria, that's a lot out of my way. But and even then, I was coming back at like 5 o'clock or so, and yeah, traffic was bad too. So, um,
Yeah,
but
I don't miss just not being on the Beltway, during the day at all. I mean,
yeah,
those days are behind me, and it's always for us where we live up in Gaithersburg. It's always decision time every time we get in the car, and we're like,
yeah,
do we test 270, 495 to go where we want to go, or do we go the ICC, pay the tolls, and see if that speeds up? It,
yeah,
a lot of times where we're going to go, it's actually a shorter distance to travel 495, but it's probably a few minutes quicker. You feel like you're moving when you're on the ICC because it's, it doesn't bog down. It just moves until you
Mhm.
hit, 95, and then you've got to deal with that if you're going to go back to 495, or if you're going to go up to Columbia or something like that. But yeah, the Riderwood area is pretty huge.
Yeah.
The residents there, for the most part, they pay a big entrance fee, to get in there, and I
Mhm.
think like 80% of that is refundable when they leave or something like that.
All right.
And
Okay.
they pay a monthly fee of several $1,000s a month. So,
Wow.
but it covers, I think, it covers their meals and some other things too. So I don't know. For some people, it just, that's, it fits. If you don't have anybody really to take care of you, you've at least got all these other people that are probably watching out for you. You've got all those clubs, etc.,
Yeah.
and things like that. So, uh,
Yeah. It was a nice place. Yeah, seemed nice, and everyone there's was very friendly to me, and I've gotten to know them kind of over 3 visits, and it was so cute because when I got there was the guy waiting for me in the lobby, and then he had a chain around his neck with paper with my name on it. So yeah, so and he did
like,
that for me last year. Although this year you think he would, we both have seen each other before, so
yeah. Hey,
we did.
when you get to be a certain age, you need to do that so you can remember who's who, right?
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, that's right. Sometimes name tags are good. But I had a little overconfidence that I knew how to get there. Usually, when you've been to some place 3 or 4 times, you think, okay, now I know exactly how to go. But no, I got the directions a little bit wrong, and my memory was a little off. The other thing is, I bought a new phone, and I don't have GPS or Waze on this phone yet. It's very bare, so I'm going to kind of need that, um, especially if I'm traveling to different places. It's
Yeah,
always good to have that. Otherwise, you can go to MapQuest or something, but I've never thought MapQuest was very good. Honestly, I've never been a MapQuest fan anyway. But
yeah. I mean,
uh,
that back in the day, that's what we had, is MapQuest,
that's
and then
right.
also to the extent of where you're printing out the directions, right?
Yes, I used to print them out.
We kind of graduated from fold out maps, from
Yeah,
the Thomas books where you're turning the page, to
yeah,
MapQuest where you're printing out the directions,
yeah,
to something on your phone, a map on your phone, whether or not it's Apple or Google or Waze. Though Google, Alphabet, they own Waze, so the difference between the two seems to be, I don't know why they have the two separate running. I mean, if they bought Waze, you would think that the idea was that because they wanted the technology, but you still have like the Google Maps, and you still have Waze. So
yeah.
I don't quite get the strategy, but whatever.
Well, you and I are old enough. I'm certainly old enough to remember when you'd go to like the 7-Eleven or something, and you can buy the book of maps in that book where
Right.
uh, yeah, no, I remember those days of having to read a map, and I think I was okay at it, but yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah. I don't think I was ever a very good navigator. So anyway.
No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't a particularly good navigator either. So,
All right. So we have some news items that we should probably
oh yeah,
cover tonight. Um, the overseas Russia peace plan, with the whole thing with Ukraine. Uh, they've been meeting a lot, hours and hours and hours, and they have, I guess they've made some progress, but my concern here is that this is really a Putin-led, Putin-endorsed peace plan that that is very favorable to Russia. I mean, they want the eastern part of Ukraine, where there's a 250,000 people live. They really don't want to cede much at all. Ukraine doesn't want to cede that territory either, and they're still kind of battling it out at this point. And we're just a few months away here, a couple months away from hitting our 4-year anniversary of this thing.
yeah,
I'm sure that President Trump, considering that he said he would end this thing, when he got into office in a few days or whatever, that he's tiring of this whole process. He seems to be favoring this plan, even though I still think it just gives too much to Putin and Russia,
Yeah,
which I don't really like.
yeah. No, I agree. I know it'd be a little bit favorable, and I can understand a little bit favorable to Putin because of the bigger power and all, but still, not if it's land that they've yet to take over. I don't think Ukraine should cede any of that. But the other problem is protections for Ukraine to prevent this in the future, because otherwise they may make a deal and then only to get invaded uh, 6 months down the road, a year down the road, 3 years down the road, or something. So no, I'm very concerned about it. But I don't know how much. I guess Putin figures he can continue, but they've lost a lot of men. I mean, Russia's spent a lot of money, and they've lost hundreds of thousands. I've even heard estimates into over 1 million. I don't know what's true. I don't actually know proper battle count, death count. Um, I guess has a position that he's a dictator, doesn't care what people think, and secondly, I don't think he cares about human life, so I think it means nothing to him. Um, that I guess the advantage of being a sociopath, you don't care who gets killed.
Yeah, right.
So um, I've just had this hope, and I don't think this is all that likely that he gets overthrown or deposed somehow. But I don't know. I mean, even Khrushchev. Remember Khrushchev? It was shortly after the Cuban Missile Crisis. They got rid of him, the Politburo, because of that screw up. So you would think that this is even a bigger disaster. It's turned out to be a bigger disaster. And I don't know. I don't really see the appeal of Putin, but I'm not Russian and I don't understand maybe the culture. But maybe it's a strongman thing and they like the strongman, but he just, I can't imagine supporting the guy. I don't really see the appeal. So,
Yeah, well, I mean, strong man for sure. I mean, he's basically set the system up so that he can stay in there for as long as he wants. That's what these guys do, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's what Hugo Chavez did, in Venezuela. They rigged the system so that they basically can stay there for life.
yeah,
Any elections you have are nothing but a big sham, right?
yeah, yeah,
You know, you know, China ostensibly at one point was at least bringing in some new leaders, but now it looks like Xi is going to be there for a long, long time. He
yeah,
has kind of changed the rules of the game, and so
yeah.
you see these, in these communist countries, these kind of strangleholds that they have. Every time I see this, I don't know if you remember a guy named Dr. Fred Schwartz.
Mm,
Yeah, but he started a thing called the Christian Anti-Communist Crusade, and Dr. Schwartz, Fred, he was from Australia, and
okay.
really smart guy, and uh, the operation ran out of Long Beach, California. Not really sophisticated, just a very dedicated kind of Christian doctor. He was a real doctor, and he'd go around the country and do things. He had a newsletter and all that, but he wrote a book decades ago, and he says you can trust the communists to be communists. It was a little paperback book, and they
Mhm.
distributed probably tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of copies of that book, just as reminders. Like, yeah, look, they're communists. They don't
Mhm.
change. you
Yeah,
know,
that's true.
they're going to operate within a certain framework. Here's the thing too is that if you when because you read, I know you read the journal. You've got the online version.
Mm,
If you look at that, if you kind of remember some of the stories that have been popping up too recently, it's just that Germany and other countries, are kind of saying, they're kind of worried about all of this, and they're kind of dusting off and preparing themselves that they need to bolster their defenses because they're not sure. They're not exactly sure if they're going to be safe. Going forward. I mean, should this peace plan, get signed off on, where it's more favorable, mostly favorable to Putin, it kind of worries them. It's just like, where are we going with this? And what does that mean for us? So, it's not only, as you mentioned, the protection for Ukraine, but just the other countries, talk about the countries that border Russia. This is a big problem. I think they're concerned that after all this time, that that if Putin gets what he wants, what's to stop him from going for more,
Mm,
down the line here? It's he probably has an insatiable appetite for that. And you said he's a psychopath. Like, does he care
mm,
about human life? I agree. No, because
mm,
this is when you empty your prisons and you throw those inexperienced people on the front lines, to try to fight back, and hold the line against the Ukrainians. When you bring in the North Koreans and you're doing the same thing to them, is that human life has no meaning, no value to him at all. He's trying to take over Ukraine, and he'll
mm.
use whatever means he can.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, our sanctions haven't fully worked since India and China have kind of, by buying oil, they've helped to prop up Russia and give them some cash, so they
Well,
haven't been totally squeezed.
well,
Uh,
I have a theory on that, and that is Venezuela. The pressure to probably get rid of Maduro may have something to do with that as well, because Venezuela is an oil-rich country. If you got rid of the socialists running it, and obviously we want freedom and democracy, but in addition to that, you would have an efficient government. Could you imagine if they produce the type of oil that they probably can? You would have a real potential source to buy from as opposed to Russia. So I've often thought that that's one of the reasons Trump wants to get rid of Maduro, to help put pressure on Putin. Because if you can get the Germans and others to be buying, hey, you got all this new Venezuelan oil coming on the market, you go buy that, and it can get you off Russian oil. That's just the theory that I have. But I wrote a column where I kind of mentioned that this week. So um, I think that's part of it in the grand chessboard of world politics. Get rid of Maduro, and you can put more pressure on Putin.
yeah, I mean that's a possibility. I mean you know Maduro certainly has not has just followed in the footsteps of Chavez,
Yeah,
and we've we've been able to put the hurt on him, financially. We're out, now we've upped the ante with with the attacks. Closed, says the airspace is closed. On these attacks on the boats. I'm thinking, one thing I'm thinking about is just like, okay, look, I don't know that every single boat is a drug boat, but if you're trying to run drugs and that we are basically we're basically attacking the boats that are coming through, why take the chance of doing
yeah,
this? It's like, America is watching this. It's just like, okay,
yeah,
are you people, is I guess the risk reward they figure is okay. And maybe the drug runners are like, well, if we, while they're doing that, if we get a few more through, maybe we can maybe they can't get all of us or whatever. I don't know. It's kind of a mystery to me. Um,
yeah. Well, I think the Hegseth story fell apart. They tried to make it look like we had the Washington Post report, and then the New York Times debunked that there was some sort of second strike to kill them all kind of thing. But it wasn't that. I think they did the second strike to destroy the ship and the contraband, the boat and the contraband. Um, but I just wonder, and so I think the Trump administration was fine there. The question is, if they try a sort of an invasion, or if they try to take out Maduro, then you may have legal questions there. That well, for example, remember Noriega '89, where we went in to get him, and that is still very questionable because you're talking about a foreign country on foreign soil. Congress didn't approve, so that's going to be a little grayer area. My understanding, and that was called Operation Just Cause, I think. Reagan opposed that, and Reagan leaves office in '89. Bush comes in, and Bush implemented that. So I wonder if Trump will try that with Maduro, And in that case, then I think you'll have a real debate there in terms of the constitutionality of him going in foreign country, arresting a leader, not going to Congress. But the stuff on the high seas and international water, I think he can do, and the strike, I think he can do. But if he ratchets it up, we'll see. See if Democrats then think they may have an issue.
Sometimes I wonder. I mean, if does Trump really care about the constitutionality of things that he does? Is like, go do it. See what happens.
Yeah,
Take it to court and see what the Supreme Court says, and then
yeah,
let it be
yeah,
that way. Because I mean,
yeah,
I do really feel that he's kind of had a no holds barred, kind of
yeah.
attitude towards things. He throws a lot of stuff out there, makes my head spin. My wife and I have these discussions, and you know, I don't know. She was saying something tonight about Trump, and I'm like, oh, he's like, the president that you love so much, and she's like, don't mock me, and I'm like,
Mm,
I'm just because she knows and she agrees. I mean, it's like he does some crazy stuff, but the net result still is a positive, even with the
yeah,
crazy stuff. That
yeah.
maybe you and I don't necessarily agree that the methodology, the results on a lot of these things are actually wind up to be pretty good for the United States overall. Um,
He pushes it, the executive power, as much as he can. Although you could argue other presidents have done the same thing. They push it as much as they seem to think they can get away with. Um, and so far, the thing is, his record's been pretty good so far. Most of the courts have held up most of what he's been doing. Not everything, but most of it. And in fact, yeah, in terms of the firing of people of independent agencies, I think the courts have mostly been with him. The layoffs of federal employees, they've mostly been with him. Um, so they've been with him most of the time, but we'll just see how far it gets pushed. Um, and then speaking of the court gave the okay to the Texas legislature so they can redraw all the districts. That came out. Also, the Texas Supreme Court said they'll hear the birthright citizenship case. So they're on the move. Um, but I don't know. People think, will Trump go too far at some point? Well, I don't know. I mean, he's been president for 5 years. Some would argue he's already gone too far in certain things, but um, I don't know. We'll see. He's got 3 more years to go. Speaking of maybe, okay, I'll give you an example. Maybe going a little too far. In the case of his rant against the Somalian immigrants, um, he has some points, but he kind of goes too far. I think in his language, and as you know, and he doesn't help himself really. And in this case, I mean, to call them garbage or Ilhan Omar or her friends and stuff, as a Christian, I don't believe that people are garbage as the children of God. So I didn't like that language. But I think he also made a point that our immigration system was a little too open and generous. And so you got a lot of people in here, as we see in Minnesota, who take advantage of it. And so you have the fraud case where over $1 billion, looks like $1 billion of fraud, and the Minnesota government sort of looked the other way because the Somalian immigrants are pretty powerful politically. But I thought it was interesting earlier this week, Trump going on his little rant there. So it was
see,
pretty rough.
yeah, see, that's the thing. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, because Trump is often his own worst enemy.
Yeah,
He doesn't control himself. If
yeah,
if they could keep him off of True Social or social media for the most part, he'd be a
mm,
lot better off. I mean,
yeah,
I think a large part of his unfavorability ratings, come from the fact that he keeps spouting off all this stuff. If he actually didn't say all those things,
yeah,
didn't do that, I think he would be looked on a lot more favorably. He would be more, quote, presidential in
mm,
that sense. But the thing is that isn't Donald Trump. It
right,
wasn't
yeah,
Donald Trump the first time around. This time around, it's kind of like all bets are off because this is
yeah,
it. He's got 4 years, from the time he came in. This is it. He's not going to get reelected. He's not going to
yeah,
be running again. So go for broke. just try to get all the stuff you want off your on your agenda, try to get it done. And so that's why you wind up with US aid, going away. The a dismantling of the Department of Education, to the degree that we haven't seen. Reagan wanted that, 45 years ago or whatever, and couldn't do it then. It's not a huge agency, but it still does things that you're like, why do we have these people running around here? And
Well,
so they've done good work, with some of that kind of thing. But on the other hand, yeah, I mean, when he starts disparaging an entire group of people like that, just and it's kind of willy nilly, just they're garbage or trash. They don't deserve to be in this country. And yeah, and you do have these 86 people that they've identified so far for that $1 billion of fraud,
yeah.
in Minnesota. But I mean, there's Governor Walsh. I mean, even the Washington Post criticized this, right? I mean, because Walsh apparently had said that they were too well governed, as one part of the excuse. But you look at this, and it's like these are Biden, era policies where they allowed expansion of like all these aid things going on, and so we've seen a lot of COVID scams,
Yeah.
lots that have gone on there, and the government's been they've been prosecuting people as they find the fraud, but $1 billion and 86 people, and they're running and they're supposed to be providing all these services. You're just like, what is wrong here? I mean, I think there's something really really wrong when you allow that level of fraud to occur under
Mhm.
your watch, and to think that just like Kamala Harris potentially could have been the president of the United States, Tim Walz potentially could have been the vice president of the United States.
Yeah.
We've definitely dodged a bullet by not having electing those two. Um, we're just in a crazy situation here, and I don't know what the final outcome is going to be in Minnesota, but you know it just shows you how much fraud goes on in this country because government doesn't they dole out all this money, our money,
Mhm.
or some taxpayer money, Minnesota's maybe their own money, but and so they don't have the policing efforts. Nobody, whoever's supposed to watch it doesn't watch it because they're just buried, knee deep with paperwork or whatever, and
Well,
they created this monolith of like, uh, you know, nobody checks on them.
yeah, and with COVID, we were trying to get so much money out the door to help the with the pandemic, but there's always a risk in that. And well, it's like even when you give aid to Ukraine, it's an emergency situation, so much goes, and you don't know how it's going to be properly spent, or if it's going to be properly spent until later. But you're just trying to get it out the door. And the thing with COVID, and I don't know about a scandal, but one of the big mistakes is after when we reopened, we should have then been more aggressive, the feds, in trying to claw back some of that money. They should have said, okay, we're open now, we're doing okay. Let's take some of this back. You don't need it. Um, but of course, state and local governments always think they need money too, so they're going to want to keep spending. But and in the Somali case, I think that's more than just lack of due diligence. I think in the case of the Walls administration, I think it's more of looking the other way, and they didn't want to find out that this community, which means so much to them politically, is involved disproportionately in some illegal activity and fraud. And so I think they look the other way. In fact, I saw the other night that the day after Kamala Harris picked Walls, there was a report about this whole fraud thing in Minneapolis. This has been known for a while. And the reporter, basically said, "Hey, Harris, you're making a big mistake. You got to look at this scandal here. Look at this." And it was sort of ignored, I think. So there's not that much new in this story. It's now finally getting attention. I think it's more that it's getting attention now. Much like the pipe bomber who was from Woodbridge, they solved the case, Bongino and Cash Patel and the FBI, but it wasn't on new information. They just combed through the old information. And so what they did is they took the existing data in terms of cell phone calls, pictures of license plates, the bot purchasing of certain things, and they narrowed it down to this guy. But it was the information was already there. It's just the FBI, they didn't draw the conclusion. They didn't zero in on the person. So
All right.
now we have.
So here's this comment that came in a little earlier. Is this a person that is trolling us?
I couldn't see. I gotta get my glasses. Yeah, they say that. I don't. I had heard the guy was an anarchist. The bomber. I have not looked into motive. I don't even know if we know a motive yet, but I will look. But I don't know. I haven't even gotten to the motive part.
Yeah, but I mean, but the left will look. They'll as soon as if they find any inkling, if they can, they will try to tie people like that back to being pro-Trump or whatever, and saying, see, now you're going to stop talking about this issue or whatever. It's all you right wingers that are at fault for this stuff. So
Well, I don't know. I mean, I remember when the shooter of Charlie Kirk was supposed to be a right winger. So you just never know. But I'll look into the story.
All right, report back
Yeah.
on that. Yeah, no, I mean, look, I mean, just this whole thing too. But I wonder too. I mean, about when you have these communities like that. So so Minnesota's got this fairly sizable Somalia community, and we have pockets. We have kind of pockets of this around the country, right? I mean, where you know, you know, Middle Easterners they've gathered in certain parts of Michigan, and all this stuff, and uh, even though Trump was really, demeaning to Ilhan Omar, who's I'm no fan of hers, uh, but he kind of paints this group with a broad brush. I mean, there are good people within these communities, but sometimes you wonder whether or not they are trying to actually become more American, or are they just trying to be Somalians living in America and trying to create their own set of rules that they live by and elect politicians that that meet that will create that kind of an atmosphere or whatever. And so you have a lot of people who might wind up being a little more radical on the one end, but
Yeah. Well, I think that's Ilhan Omar's view. I think she's a Somalian first, and I think she's even said that in her own language. And I don't know. I guess they went to Minneapolis in part or Minnesota because generous benefits, and they started building a community there over time, and then continuing to grow. And then sometimes you got to concentrate your forces. So they probably figure they're already there. They got a member elected to Congress, so they might as well just keep moving in to Minnesota. Maybe take it over one state at a time. But I thought it was a mistake back in the Clinton years to start bringing in all these folks from Somalia. I think it was. I understand the compassion aspect, and so I'm not totally discounting that, but there got to be some limits. And I think it's fair to point out. It's fair, I think, to look at different groups and to see who's been more successful at assimilating and prospering and who hasn't. I think it's a legitimate thing because you got to figure that in when you're going to bring in more people. And the other thing about the Somalis in this case is a cultural difference, and that is, I think back in their homeland, stealing from the government's fair game. There's nothing wrong with that. So I think they kind of bring that here. So they're stealing from the taxpayers. Well, so what? They're stealing from the government. The government here, they probably feel is every bit as bad as the warlords. So maybe a cultural difference there too.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something to be said for that. It's just that, you know, they're bringing what they were brought up to, what they've seen or learned in their home countries, and like, well, our governments are corrupt, so maybe all governments are corrupt. So
Yeah.
what's the big deal about stealing from the government or ripping other people off? They don't see it as a big deal. But you have to watch out. I mean, you have to do some vetting of who you're allowing into this country for many reasons. And if you go across the pond and you look at Great Britain, uh, you know, their kind of open border policy, creating letting all these Muslims in, has given them a lot of pain now. Uh, you know, that community has become huge, uh, and there's a lot of radicalism within those communities that has stoked a lot of violence. Not
Mhm.
all, but there has been. And when they go to a country like that and they don't have a lot of prospects for jobs and things like this, and they wind up kind of in the slummy areas. What are they going to do? They can easily be radicalized, committing crime, committing acts of terror. Not that big a deal. I mean, it's like idle hands. They need something to do. Somebody convinces them that, you know, they will be forever remembered if they sacrifice themselves by, just becoming a martyr for the cause or whatever. And so Great Britain is sitting on this problem of they've allowed a lot of these people in, but they don't know who these people are.
Yeah.
Um, and Europe has had that problem. And there's a lot of that kind of open border situation where kind of there's a lot of bad elements that have moved into some of these areas and have kind of created this dangerous situation for the governments in these other nations. I think we do a better job, and we definitely have done a much better job, of basically shutting down the border, uh, under Trump, and making it just less palatable, less attractive to come over,
Yeah.
because you're probably going to get caught and you're probably going to get sent back. And in the meantime, until you do get sent back, you're probably just going to be living in conditions that you don't really want to be living in.
Yeah. No, I agree. And um, I think he's got to tighten and I think Trump is going forward tightening on the borders, as he's already said, from migrants from most every third world countries. He said, depending on how he defines third world, I don't know. I'd almost argue Russia's a third world country, but um, anyway, so we'll see. But Biden let a lot of people in, so we have to go back and revet in many cases, maybe. So,
Yeah, I mean, we're
uh,
still, I mean, we're still dealing with things about the Biden era policies, right? To
yeah,
try to try to course correct as we can, and try to change things. Uh,
you know what?
Go ahead.
Well, speaking of that, Hakeem Jeffries, I saw a brief interview, as much as I could watch of it, on I forgot the network, but he was asked about would you give Trump credit for the border, and it was the oddest thing because he did really, but he put it in such a way. He said it happened on Trump's watch, so sure he gets credit for it. But it didn't just happen on his watch as if it was as he was passive. It happened on his watch because he went ahead and secured the border, and I thought that was interesting. And the reporter didn't do much follow up, but so he sort of gave him credit, but it was giving him credit in such a way that doesn't make any sense. That it just magically happened. It would magically have to stop this invasion. And the other thing is, Hakeem Jeffries supported a plan to allow 5,000 in per day. Well, now if there's zero coming in, well, that's not what Hakeem Jeffries wanted. So how does Hakeem Jeffries then seem to praise Trump for securing the border when he was in favor of 5,000 a day? So it's an interesting interview. So if you get a chance, check that out. I don't know what network that was on, but Jeffries gave him a little bit of credit.
Yeah, when you talk about credit, what about so this brings up something too. Uh, Henry Cuellar getting pardoned,
Yes, that's
right? He and
right.
his wife. So he's now, he's praised Trump. I mean, you
Got a
have
pardon, yeah,
you almost have to do that after getting pardoned for something like that.
yeah,
You know, I don't know if Cuellar and his wife were guilty. I didn't go into the weeds on all that stuff.
yeah.
Um,
I don't
but
know.
it wasn't something that I don't think it was on anybody's radar really that he would do that.
Mm,
Which then created speculation. Is like, will he switch parties? I don't think so. I think Cuellar is going to remain a Democrat, but he may just look to Trump and the Republicans, and maybe he might throw his support to administration's way once in a while on a vote or whatever, going
yeah,
forward. So, but yeah, that was kind of like, sometimes I wonder, Trump has been pardoning these various people. Is that, what the line of thinking is here is that, you
mm,
know, how does this benefit him politically? Because I'm sure they look at that and try to say, by doing this, we probably can get something else out of this.
yeah.
Um, and Trump loves praise.
Mm, yeah, he
You,
does. He's a little too
you,
much.
you, yeah, I don't know if you saw this. I only saw this late this afternoon. So we have the World Cup that we're going to be hosting, part of the hosting, right? And the president of FIFA, I guess it was, awarded Trump the first like FIFA Peace Prize, right?
Yeah,
All this stuff. And it's like, this is a totally made up thing, right? I mean,
yeah,
this is the first one they've ever done. It's just,
mm,
this is how you appease Trump. Trump couldn't get the Nobel Peace Prize, but FIFA steps in and says, here's our Peace Prize. you
yeah.
know, just like, and Trump eats it all up. It's just, but it's kind of like, really, I mean, it's like, how far do we have to go sometimes to feed his ego? Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
and
I also think he sympathizes with people he thinks were railroaded, and so he
yeah,
probably thinks
yeah,
Quayle was railroaded.
yeah, that's true. I mean, considering how much he's been under attack, since he first got elected in 2016, I think he does look at these people and say, the justice system doesn't always work,
Yeah.
and so he's giving a lot of people another chance to kind of get their lives put together or whatever,
Yeah.
and go on and fix that. So, uh, and presidents have been pardoning people for forever and ever, it seems. And but Trump is interesting to me because he's pardoning them along the way. A lot of times a lot of times there's a slew of them at the end of your term. He's just going along here and he's like, oh, I'll pardon this person. He's pardoning this person. You know,
Yeah.
and
Usually, you're right. Usually, when I was a kid growing up, it was done really at the end of the term. So, yeah.
yeah. So I think that's what catches people off guard is that it's happening kind of as we go rather than just
Yeah.
all at once. And
Yeah.
so we get a chance to see what he's kind of thinking along that way. You were talking about how you've been you went to Riderwood and you were speaking about elections and stuff like that. So we did have a special election
Yeah.
in
So,
Tennessee. It
yep.
was a Republican seat. Mark Green had resigned. He had won that seat by, I think, was it 21 points the last time around. Trump carried that area by 22. I didn't look back at the history of that district, but as I understand it, it's a pretty red district, so the numbers may have been equally as good, in previous years. Um, a big fight ensued for the seat. Matt Van Epps came out as the winner, I guess, after the primary, and then had to fight off this, what was her name, Afton Bain.
Yep. Oddly
And
named Afton Man.
yeah, and she's just a crazy woman. So
Yeah,
and
she is.
the polls had shown they were going to be really close. The race really wasn't that close, but we are now definitely getting a lot of commentary about, this is trouble for the Republicans in 2026 because he won by 9,
Mm.
where it was carried by 21 before. I have kind of a yes and no feeling about that. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, The thing about it is, I thought his victory was still pretty solid considering it was a special election. He's not the incumbent, so maybe he's not all that known in lots of parts of the district. Um, a special election meeting, which was the week after Thanksgiving. Democrats, were hungry and ready to vote. With Republicans, you can kind of understand they're going to be a little less likely to come out for special election. So I didn't think it was that disappointing. I thought it was fairly solid victory, and she ended up winning in Nashville, Davidson County, I guess Nashville, her part of Nashville, which is weird because she said she hated Nashville. She still ended up carrying that part, but no, I thought it was solid victory. It wasn't great or extraordinary, as you know by the redness of the district, but I didn't think it was that bad. And now he's the incumbent. I don't think he has to worry about it. And sometimes special elections are harder to extrapolate in terms of what it means for the midterm. In the midterms, I still think most of our people are going to be coming out. It's just that intensity. We probably have to up it a bit, and that's the trick. But no, I think Republicans should be relieved at the very least. And I didn't think it was that poor of a victory, really.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with that. I mean, I don't think this is something to get too concerned about it. I think Epps may get them back, into a more comfortable margin, in 2026. As you said, he'll have the power of incumbency, which can carry a lot of weight in elections. It'll be, Trump won't be officially on the ballot, which but so Van Epps has got to, he's got to run on his own, though he's going to probably get the Trump endorsement. I mean, he was solidly with Trump, and trying to promote him during this phase. These special elections can be tricky because when you bring up Trump, who is becoming more unpopular in a lot of areas, because the Democrats, I think, have had some success with the message of affordability. And I think they've pushed that message, and the Republicans have not, you know, done a good job of countering that message with something to say, you know, things are fine. We've actually improved things since we came into office. They haven't done that. They haven't done that on healthcare either. I mean, the Democrats, I think Elizabeth Warren was talking about how the average premium for families healthcare premium is going to be like $27,000 next year because of the loss of enhanced subsidies. And I'm like, what kind of plan will cost you $27,000? That I never saw anything close to that. You
Mm-hmm.
know, even years ago, even if I factor in inflation, I'm like, no, unless you've got some plan that is just extremely low deductible with incredible benefits, I don't see how you even get close to something like that at all. So I think that they're pulling figures that don't make any sense, and the Republicans, they're just they're not standing as firm as they should. They're holding the line okay, but apparently I guess there's some Republicans that are concerned you know about these subsidies. Maybe we ought to go ahead and extend them for 2 years. And I'm like, no, don't do it. You got to stand your ground. These plans, extending this benefit is bad. This is a Biden era thing that was bad. It it basically gave the middle class a chance to ride on the taxpayer dime, right?
Mm-hmm.
To get reduced healthcare costs. People who could really, there were people out there who could afford it. That were getting, incredible subsidies. And if you can't afford Plan A, choose Plan B or C. Find something that fits in there. Uh, you know, we don't need Affordable Care Act continuing to live on in this fashion. What this is that hydra this is just going, thanks to the Democrats. They keep finding ways to extend and expand it, and this is actually not helping the American people at all.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I do think Republicans are concerned. because healthcare it's going to be a big issue. And then if you look at a premium rise next year, starting next year, it could make it a little tougher for Republicans. So they may want to try to do something. But our problem is we haven't really developed the alternative, and you can't beat something with nothing. And Democrats have an idea on the table that's bad. I mean, single payer or whatever they're pushing is bad, but we have to be able to counter that. And we have all kinds of different ideas, but sometimes they're not as easy to explain. And sometimes it's easier in life just to explain, we're going to give you a free bus ride or something, So, yeah, okay. So in healthcare, it's we've tended to have a disadvantage on that issue. We haven't had really had the discipline to come up with our elevator speech or our basic general message. So that's tough. But I don't know. I think they'll try. Maybe they'll try to. They're going to give the Democrats a vote. Maybe they'll try to negotiate. You will give you subsidy increases, and you do this or you do something. So maybe they'll come up with some sort of compromise. I think Trump would probably like some sort of compromise, but I don't know what could pass.
Yeah, I'm sure that Trump does. I mean, Trump looks for these legislative victories. He
Yeah,
really wants that um,
yeah,
overall, and the Republicans are kind of stuck on this. They're kind of trying to figure out how they can, but they've always had this. To me, they've always had this long-term problem of really having messaging issues. The Democrats put them on their heels, and they don't really have an answer for a lot of things. And as you say, where's the Republican plan? I mean, the Democrats are right in the sense of like, okay, you know, here's our plan. Where's your plan? You keep talking
yeah,
about you don't want to extend these subsidies, these enhanced subsidies. Where's your plan? Well, they haven't really put forth anything that's there that's a good answer for that. Yeah, I mean, and healthcare premiums, they're going up. That's just a that is a fact. I mean, we went through a period, when we had COVID. COVID was good for lowering healthcare costs in general, and insurance costs, like on your car. People weren't using services as much as they normally would. you know but post COVID, that gets picked up. Medicare, you're dealing with people over 65. They are going to be the sicker group of people. Somebody was putting on next door of the one I'm on, and they're saying like, oh, the average, the increase in Social Security will be about 2.8%, or about $54 on the average. But there's a 9.7% increase in the healthcare, premium. So the net for the average family, it means is that they're going to come out with, I don't know, what was it, $20 or something like that. It depends on how much money you're taking on Social Security too, because the healthcare premium is kind of fixed for the majority of Medicare, recipients and Social Security people. Uh, so like my wife will sometime this month will probably get her first ever Social Security check, and I don't know if she benefits, if she gets the full. Her January check will be reflecting the cost of living increase that's granted, but say it was, and it's because she didn't work a whole lot. Um, I I guessed that her net gain after paying the increased health premium to Medicare would be $4 a month.
mm,
All
mm.
right. Now, if you live on Social Security and you're like that, okay, you can't live. But if your only source of income is Social Security, you got a problem anyway. That's a whole nother thing about that is not your entire retirement, or never should be, right? It's not designed to do that. It's not designed as
It's
being
okay.
your one and only health care. So your one and only kind of pension plan and everything like that, rather. So it's people get really worked up about this stuff, and I'm like, there's a lot of things going on here, but if healthcare costs are going up, there's a limit as to how much we can do to try to keep it down. And there were times even, where we saw, no increases or very little increases. There have been those cases, but lately it's just been there's been a lot of cost pressure. So
Yeah. Well, it is. So we need to have market alternatives to try to bring down the the cost curve or put downward pressure on the increases, certainly.
right. All
But
right. So we said we're going to stay within the limits. So let's
all right,
do final thoughts.
all right. Well, final thoughts. Spiro T. Agnew. No, I'm just joking. Uh, no, final thought. Well, like I said, I was great to be in Maryland yesterday, speaking to the group, and hope to come back to Maryland. Not necessarily the same group, but this coming year, talking about my book. And keep checking my Substack accounts. I had another column up this week. I'll try to boost it. I try to get to 3 a week, but sometimes I have trouble getting 3 a week. So I need to try to increase it. Ideally 3 a week. So it's not as easy as you might think to do 3 a week.
Just
But
get AI to write it for you.
yeah, I gotta make it genuine. But otherwise,
I was gonna say,
yeah,
the one thing about AI though is just as much as like, oh, you're right about the genuine factor. It's just that you could use it to kind of give you an idea, maybe gather some facts potentially that take you a
yeah,
while. You may have
yeah,
to double check some of those to make sure that they're correct, but
yeah.
it could save some time in gathering information and
Yeah,
let.
I yeah, I'm very much low tech. I just I'll read like they said the Wall Street Journal. I read the National Review, and then I check all these podcasts all the time. So I'm always on podcasts. It's interesting. I don't even watch regular TV really anymore. I'm just always really just podcasts, maybe sports, throw in some sports, but that's about it. And even network news, I don't watch. I don't even watch network news. Uh, and even not much of cable news really. So. Yeah,
Yeah.
but anyway, that's about it. Hopefully, we'll have a mild winter, but I kind of doubt it. But I'm kind of hoping for that. And I don't know that we're expecting a warm up anytime soon. I mean, I realize we're just beginning winter, but I mean, usually you'll have like a few days where you have like the warm up. Even in the dead of winter, you'll have a couple of days like that. But I don't even know if we got a warm up coming. So, but
Yeah.
otherwise, doing good.
Yeah. I was looking ahead. At least the Apple Weather app is not that great, but I mean, I was looking ahead there, and the forecast going for the next week is, like temperatures in the 30s and 40s during the day, you know. So it's gonna be chilly. It's gonna be
Yeah.
chilly. But I'm looking. I was hoping that might if we get some days in the 50s, that would be nice. But
It
yeah,
would, yeah. I would
it
like
would.
that, even just for a couple days, it would warm us
Right.
up. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I find
Because the other day it was like yesterday. Was it yesterday? It was like windy as heck.
it's interesting. My last thought is that the cold, I don't know what it is. Sometimes it seems to make me a little more tired, or sleepy. So I don't know why, but the cold seems to have that effect on me. So I don't know. Maybe well, after all, animals they hibernate in the winter. They got to sleep
Right.
all the time. So.
That's something that we learn by that, right?
Yeah, yeah, maybe. But that's about it.
All right. As we close this out, one thing that I did want to ask you though, just really briefly, about the shakeup in the Virginia GOP. If you had been watching that or had any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I met Mark Peake once. He seemed like a nice guy, but I guess they were kind of dissatisfied with him as the chairman. I I think I understand why you're doing it. You're making the change. It's like the baseball team. You make your change at the manager's level, and so the party's going to find a new leader. But the reality is, this year, I mean, we had a top of the ticket, and Winston wasn't the strongest candidate, so to speak. And I think it sort of stems from there. Dwight would tell you that Republicans would have been better off if they went with Jason Miyares to head the ticket, maybe. But I don't know. I can understand we'll change the state party chairman. Maybe that'll help, but I think it's really just a marginal thing. that probably only change the margins. What we need are issues, and the Democrats will take over the majority of the House big time. Well, they have the majority, but they'll take it big time. And the thing is to look for is they'll overreach. I think they'll overreach, and then we'll have the opportunity then. But
Mm.
um,
And once again, elections have consequences.
that's right. That's right. Yeah. Thanks for plugging the book. Check it
Yeah.
out. But we'll say I'm not totally despondent. I think Republicans in Virginia can make a comeback, and I think will to some degree at some point.
Yeah, they need to do something because they've been losing a lot of ground in the state house, and
Yeah,
which has been quite a reversal from how it used to be for them. So that
yeah,
you have to watch out that this trend does not continue. You've got to kind of arrest it and reverse
yeah,
it because uh, it
yeah,
it doesn't take a lot before you find yourself in the wilderness, really trying to find a way back, which can take a long time. And Republicans face that as a national party too. Sometimes it's like, 2026 will be an interesting year, but I think the Republicans can hold on to the House, but they've got to do a better job of messaging. They've got to improve some other things. Um, they don't have great candidates running, throughout. But if the sentiment is still on affordability, or and things like that, and healthcare costs, if those things are the issues, then that probably can affect those districts that were very close the last time around, and could tip them the other way. So we'll see. My only other comment, I think, too, is just that Trump uh, basically reversed the cafe standards
mm,
uh, that Biden had signed off on, where you had to have 50, I think it was 50.1 mile per hour, corporate average fuel economy for cars, which basically meant you would have to have an enormous amount of EVs that you were producing to meet
yeah,
that, as a
yeah,
car manufacturer. Um,
yeah,
he's done away with that and
good,
shown his recommitment to fossil fuels and to gas. So
good.
I think it's back down to 34 something, which is that's easy in these days. And I don't know. I mean, there are reports that you know all is not lost for EVs, but a couple of things have happened here. I mean, one was just that EVs lost their $7,500 tax credit, and we saw sales plunge from September, where
Yeah,
people were just buying what they could before it expired. I don't see how that recovers anytime soon.
yeah,
And then by rolling back these cafe standards, uh, they there's also these credits that were being sold, created and being sold, and Tesla was a major beneficiary of this as well, and those have gone away. So
yeah,
a lot of the gimmicky stuff that was propping these things up is gone, and so I think as a result we're gonna have a little more transparent market. Say, you know, is there really a market for EVs to that extent? Do people really, what do people really want in a car? And we'll see that going forward. All right. Well, that was a good night. We just
mm,
barely went over time, which I think is good. That's so anybody out there who's joined us tonight, hope you enjoyed it. Uh, we uh, we miss our fellow doctors, but they're out there doing good political work. I don't even know
yeah.
where the convention is being held because I don't pay attention to this anymore. Uh, so you'll see Dwight and hopefully Chris back next week. Thank you, David, for joining us tonight,
Thank you.
and we will be back again next week. And I guess maybe sometime before the end of the year, maybe we'll do some. Dwight will want to do some top 10. I think he's always tried to do these in the past. I don't know if he's still doing it, but
Yeah.
anyway, have a good night, everybody. We will see you, and there'll be no Missoni's commercial.
All righty. See you later.
All right, going to kill that. Well, there we go.